Possible criminal prosecution, an institution left on the brink of collapse, a new probe. These are some of the findings and recommendations by the Zondo Commission regarding the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa. The Commission dedicated over 250 pages looking into evidence at the agency, but is still concerned that there's more than meets the eye. One of those at the center of paralysing the parastatal, of course, this is according to the report, is former Group CEO Lucky Montana, and he joins us live now. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure you've seen, Dr. Montana, what the report says about you. Your reaction?
Well, thanks very much, Wendy, and good evening to your viewers. Let me start at the general level. I think, firstly, to congratulate, of course, Chief Justice Zondo for completing the report. I think it's important for the country. And secondly, of course, on his appointment as a Chief Justice of the country. Remember, this report comes after his appointment. And one of the biggest issue, of course, or biggest test for Chief Justice Zondo is whether he can be Chief Justice for all the people of South Africa. And considering how he emerged from the Judicial Service Commission, the fact that only 3 people supported him, the rest didn't support him, but of course the authority or the power in terms of the Constitution lies with the President. When I look at the report, I ask myself, did Chief Justice Zondo assist the country? Because before we look at ourselves, the biggest test of this report is whether it enables us to solve our problems. Of course, we must hold people like myself who are in public office accountable, but also must lay the basis to take our country forward, unite. When I look at that, and having gone into the details of the report, I'm afraid to say that the report fails the biggest test. Currently, I think Chief Justice Zondo has responded so much to those, the gang that calls for, we want to see orange overalls, we want to see a lot of things. Last week he told us, we are delaying the submission of this report so that we can correct errors, as it were. I read the report. There's so many errors. In fact, even the quality of the report, it shocks me. Should it serve as a basis for moving forward? I'm not sure. But when I look more specifically at Prasa, I picked up over and I've taken quite a lot of notes. I refer specific pages in the report where I think not only the Commission got it wrong, but I think that there's a huge misrepresentation. You can see the bias. I'm not even surprised. It was not unexpected because you recall before I testified at the Commission, I indicated that Chief Justice Zondo, at that time Deputy Chief Justice, has actually shown bias in all of those things. When I look at the report, I see that in all the pages. I see a litany of all of those things. So I think the report is there. And we've got to deal with it. I see some people say there must be arrest, but the Chief Justice himself has said in one of his recommendations, we still have to see how Prasa, you remember Prasa collapsed after I've left the organization. The decision to, for example, and this would be my last point, the decision to cancel security contracts, which resulted in infrastructure being destroyed, happened in 2020. 5 years after I've left that organization. And I welcome the opportunity, or rather the recommendation is made, that a proper inquiry should be held about Prasa.
But it's not mincing its words, though, when it comes to the Siangena, for example, and the Shifambo contracts, and it really calls for criminal prosecution, and you are one of those that it says that the NDPP must try to really make, look further here for possible criminal prosecution. Well,
you recall, Bongi, the call for investigation doesn't start today. It's not a new thing. In fact, since I left Prasa, I've been investigated by the Hawks. I've been investigated by the SIU. And I think the result will be the same. If they do a proper investigation, they'll actually find that all the things they're talking about are false. When I testified at the Commission, I actually demonstrated to the chairperson of the Commission and his team that the Shifambo contract was not a corrupt contract. I actually dealt with the numbers because at the time Chief Justice was actually banging the table that this this contract of 3.5 billion. I said, that's the value of the contract, but we spent only 2.6 billion rands. And if you break down those amounts, you'll see that almost 1.9 billion of that amount went to the business of the trains. You see that 300 million rands of that 2.6 also went to paying SARS tax, and 100 million rands went to about, I think, customs. So that left you with 200 million rands. Now the report takes, it presented as part of its evidence the numbers that were presented by one, I think, Mr. Sachs, who was formerly with one of the companies that was doing the investigations. Those numbers, in fact, are a clear demonstration when you look at the money flows, that you can talk about irregularities or problems there and there, but corruption is not one of those.
The courts are saying the same thing, though, when it comes to these contracts, and they say that they are littered with corruption, there's irregularities. So are you saying then that, like you said, even in the state capture, I remember when you said that you don't even agree with what the courts found. So are you saying, though, that these two entities are pretty much finding the same things and they are wrong? Is that what you're saying?
If my father takes me to a community meeting and say my son is a criminal, the community would believe that, isn't it? If the chairman of Prasa at that time, Popo Molefe, goes to court and say we found irregularities and corruption, you remember in both cases, in fact, I applied. I actually presented affidavits to demonstrate that both Popo Molefe as well as Prasa were wrong in their thing. And the commission, by the way, in its own assessment, in page 621, it makes an important point. It says, in all the issues that have been raised, I didn't respond verbally. In fact, it says that a fair amount of evidence relating to Lucky Montana was based on documents, where I proved that in all of these two contracts, let me give you one concrete example. Tulima Donsela started this whole problem. She says Prasa extended 2 stations into 9 and spent 1.9 billion rands. That's what she said in a report, derailed. In my testimony before the commission, I actually showed that Prasa spent 61.8 million rands. Now you can see there's 1.9, there's 61 million rands. So you can see that the commission takes that and says, well, it's a public protector, we can't challenge her report, but she's wrong. Secondly, the commission, Advocate Madonsela said in a report, all the work for 2010 were completed in 2011. In my submission, I submitted completion certificates, even events where we're actually launching this before the 2010 World Cup. So here are two major significant areas that the commission says we want to believe Advocate Madonsela. So I think it will be left to the Hawks to investigate, satisfy themselves. And let me tell you, Bongi, they're not going to find what this commission is talking about. They're going to find the true facts. So I'm not worried about that. Yeah.
You talk about these contracts. You then, of course, went to derailed. I'm keen to find out from you, because you've written them down briefly. What other parts for you would you say are the errors?
Let me deal with the big one first. You remember when I went to the commission, there was noise. Lucky Montana stole 36 million and bought houses. Read page 744, conclusions in respect of property dealings. That report for the first time says, these houses belong to Precise Trade. They are not Montana's properties. Because I went there, I presented for properties that belong to me. I presented each one of them, how it was funded by the bank. I gave the Zondo Commission the, bond papers, repayments, and all of those details. Today, in the report that was submitted yesterday, the final report, they're no longer talking about Montana stole 36 or spent 36 million to buy houses. They're saying, no, those houses belong to Precise Trade. But Mr. Montana was involved with Mr. Rian van der Walt.
I was going to go there, because it does say that, as much as you say that this is what it said about the properties, but the report also continues to say you put yourself in a position of a conflict of interest by working with somebody at your business level interest with someone who was linked to the Siangena contract. Now, if someone is linked to a contract, it was seen, according to the report, that there may have been an exchange of favors here, that he does a favor for you in business, and then you in turn do that at Prasa. So it puts you right at the conflict of interest accusation.
Mongi, you know the power of propaganda. The more you repeat something, everyone believes suddenly is the truth. Mr. Rian van der Walt is a lawyer. He never worked for Siangena. He had a company called Precise Trade and Trading. Precise Trade. I think the last part of the name I can't recall. He was involved in properties. I had properties. I had 7 properties, which were financed by ABSA, and I went to the State Capture Commission. Here are the properties that are financed by the bank. And I sold property A to finance acquisition there or to be part of partnership. There's nothing unlawful. There's no conflict of interest there. You could see that when I went to the State Capture Commission, they'd already prepared their document. You know, this commission is so biased. Justice Zondo, if I was someone who was emotional, I would say, I wish you would rot or burn in hell. But I would say that maybe you should burn under the African sun. The fact of the matter is, I proved, and the commissioner, I kept on asking Chief Justice Zondo, now I've shown you how I've acquired all my properties. And this is about bought. I showed you how much I spent. The bank gave me 10.5 million rents. I was paying over 96,000 rents every month to service that bond. And these are the different properties that I bought. Now, the story in the very report has changed. So that is one part, Bongi, I want to highlight. Let me highlight another important one, which I think is very important. He says, and this shows bias, because the bias is in favor of certain witnesses, and more specifically, my former boss, my chairman, Dr. Popo Molefe. But the commission says in paragraph 1809, I think it's page 663. He says, since the term of office of the Molefe board ended, that the DPCR, which is the Hawks, has not completed its investigation, which reveals quite clearly that the boards that came after the Molefe board may have lacked the commitment that the Molefe board had. Surely, and let me read you what the head of the Hawks, General Lebeya, or rather the SIU, what he said, why the SIU, or rather the Hawks, didn't complete their thing. He says in page 661, paragraph 1812.3, he says there was a lack of cooperation from Prasa employees, especially Mrs. Ngoye and Mr. Dingiswai, who insisted on being part of every interview with Prasa employees. And they specifically mentioned that they wanted to interview Mr. Mamabolo, Paka Mamabolo, who made all these allegations. And he said they wanted to be there, and you know why? Because Bongi, Mr. Paka Mamabolo didn't write the affidavit. It was part of a scheme that was ran by Werksmans. They wrote this affidavit for him. And then when the Hawk said, please come, we want to interview you, Prasa wanted to be there, precisely because they knew that it will not sustain the narrative that they had against him.
Yet the report at the same time, it says that you were an obstacle, somewhat seen as an obstacle when it comes to the work of the board. They could not do their fiduciary duties because you simply were refusing to clarify certain things.
Again, let me repeat, Bongi. I was at the State Capture Commission. I told Justice Zondo that is actually so false. Okay? I actually showed the level of cooperation. But if you look at this commission, one of the major issues I raised at the commission was the irregular appointment of Werksmans. Okay? I would urge your viewers to read, for example, one of the important areas in page 778, because I went into the details. I was just so shocked about the level of of dishonesty. The commission says everything irregular must deal with it. Okay? And it comes, here's Werksmans, who were appointed irregularly, who were paid over 400 million rands.
Yet you said...
No, can I please finish this point? I think it's very important. So you say we are chasing people who did irregular things. Werksmans was appointed irregularly. They are also being investigated by the SIU. In page 778, the commission, not Werksmans, go to great lengths to protect this company. Yet companies like KPMG, Bain, were even forced to pay back the money that they obtained under the so-called state capture. Here's a company that the commission goes out of its way to make sure that it's protected. It's not held accountable. So you can see that there are two standards that are being applied. Chief Justice Zondo says in his reports, particularly first volume of his report, and he continued with that, even is present in the current report. He says, if you didn't challenge any evidence and you didn't offer an alternative version, so the allegations against you stands. Okay? Mr. Nati Khena was the acting CEO after I've left Prasa, has actually deposed to an affidavit which is so damning of Werksmans, which is of damning of Popo Molefe. It's not in the report. It supports what I said. And can I give you the last example in this report?
Very briefly.
Very briefly. Popo Molefe made an allegation that Jacob Zuma called a meeting where he was trying to impose me to be reinstated. You remember, I can't be reinstated because I resigned from Prasa. I was never fired. Now there are 5 people in that meeting. Other than the president, it's Minister Jeff Adebe, Minister Dipuo Peters, it's myself, it's Popo Molefe. The 3 of us, we deposed to an affidavit independently that this was not even discussed at the meeting. Okay? The commission, you can see that Popo Molefe actually lied to the commission. In this report, in this page I've just mentioned, they elevate the views of Popo Molefe about 3, which means a position that was actually corroborated by 3 witnesses, as it were. So I say that, was this commission, is it helping the country? Or is it just responding to the group that says, want to see orange overalls? And I'll tell you that if we continue on those paths, will divide this country for many years to come.
There was also something you said in the commission when it comes to Werksman, for example. You had said that Advocate Soni had received a briefing from them, which is something that he denied. But
no, he accepted it.
He said that it was over 15 years ago, but not for
15
the
years.
matter that you had said.
No, recently. And he actually, at the beginning, lied to Justice Zondo. And at the end, he went on a long explanation. At the end, he admitted. Okay? Now, I applied to Justice Zondo for him to recuse himself. I put a 50-page application. You know what happened? Justice Zondo said, no, Mr. Montana will answer. The commission completed its work. It submitted 2 reports to the president. And after March, Justice Zondo wrote the report and said, will not accede to your request. 8 months after it has completed its work. So it's so scandalous. If someone is Justice Zondo is truly committed to justice, if he says he's a Chief Justice for all the people of South Africa, he cannot be so selective in his application of the law, and I think he's duty bound to find the truth. Whether we'll take him on review, I think is something that I cannot say today, but when I look at this report, it actually shows the extent to which our country is rotten, that the judiciary...
So you're not ruling out the possibility that you'll take it on review?
No, it's a right Bungi I have in law. I'm still reading this report. And if I look at the report beyond Prasa, I've looked, for example, at let's deal with the SABC as an example. I won't go into that. But you could see that when you deal with the issue of multi-choice in the SABC, I read that report, it shocks me. Because it actually tells us that Chief Justice Zondo is beholden to vested interest. And that is why he has written the report in the manner that he has done. At the right time, I think that things will work out. But for me,
what kind of ditupa are these that you're talking about?
Well, I'm saying that I could take this on review, number one. But of course, I think politically, we have to agitate for change. When we see, I spoke at length, by the way, during my testimony about corrupt judges. And you remember Advocate Soni said to me that I'm attacking the judges and everything. And in fact, and credit to Justice Zondo, he said, no. Judges can be criticized. If you look at the Siangena and the Siangena and Sufambo judgments, you'll actually see that they've been written at the same place by same people. And I presented evidence and a report where the judgment was drawn from the report. So for me, this report was aimed to beat up drums, but as another lawyer said today, it became a damn squeak. I know that the SABC yesterday was saying, these are breaking news. There was no breaking news. It was such a poor report, to put it bluntly.
I'm glad you watched the show, because then
I
you
always
do know
watch
that.
the show,
Thank
yes.
you. We appreciate it. So let's talk about your tenure then, because you did say in the State Capture Commission, for example, that 2013, 2014, there was, of course, some irregular expenditure, and even as we see in financial records, it does show. This institution, the Chief Justice says he's not even sure that it may recover. You were at the helm at some point at Prasa.
Why would Justice Zondo lie?
Can I finish this question? Can I finish this question? You were at some point the group CEO.
Yeah.
This institution did not fail overnight.
Yeah.
Do you take any responsibility at all for what has happened at Prasa, given that now a lot of people are saying it's on the brink of collapse?
You know, I'm a proud South African and I'm an honest man. Actually, when I went to the Zondo Commission, I said as a human being, I probably make a lot of mistakes. But corruption is not one of them, because I'm not involved in corruption. But let me give South Africans the numbers. You know, there was no Prasa in this country. I was asked to bring together these entities that we had. 10 years ago, in March 2009, I led a process that resulted in the formation of Prasa. So let's tell the people out there that what you call Prasa is a relatively new baby. This thing that was this big thing and suddenly it collapsed is not true. But let me give you some numbers quickly, Ebongi. When I was Chief Executive Officer of Prasa, we were doing over 500, to be more specific, 541 million passenger trips. Okay? It tells you the number of trains that were running. I left Prasa in 2015, July 2015. From 2016, 2017, 2018, Prasa was doing less than 200 million passenger trips. It's a drop of 70%.
So you're saying
let me give you another.
We're running out of time.
Yeah, let me give you another good number. When in 2013, we raised over the revenues for Prasa, excluding government subsidy, was in the region of 3.9, almost 4 billion rands. 3 years down the line, this company under Popo Molefe was collecting 1.6 million rand in revenues.
There was irregular expenditure during your tenure. There was also what even the public protector says, for example, was wasteful expenditure with the unlawful suspensions of people. That's what you called it, unlawful suspensions of people that were speaking against what was happening at Prasa at the time. And even when you look at the report, give me a second to finish.
Does the CEO of SABC suspend somebody who sits here?
But give me a second to finish.
I don't suspend employees in a company. It doesn't work that way.
I hear you.
It's so false.
But it happened even under your tenure, because you're at the helm, you must be held to account. I ask you again, let's look at what happened at Prasa. And there was also even quite a lot going wrong even at the time. What responsibility do you take as an accounting officer, as the man who was once at the helm, for where this institution finds itself, if any?
Bongi,
very briefly.
Bongi, let's tell the public. When I was CEO for 10 years, Prasa had what we call unqualified audit reports done independently by the Auditor General of South Africa. You can talk about matters of emphasis, but there were controls in place. I ran the organization. We invested. We started a new era or new cycle of investment into railways. The last time there was investment in railways, it was in 1986 in this country. We came in there, we started on a new process, and you are leaders in this country. When we bought the new trains that you see, the commuter trains that they call people's trains, we bought those. They wanted chairs.
So all of this that you're saying you're going to present before the special commission that now they are recommending is set up because the Chief Justice seems to believe that there's more that happened at Prasa than what the public knows.
Bongi, when I testified, I prepared an over 400-page affidavit. I actually dealt with the 5 years.
But are you going to be cooperating with this,
Bongi,
special commission?
I'll share information. You remember 2018, I was in Parliament. I testified. That commission said there must be a special, this recommendation doesn't come from Chief Justice, it comes from the 2018 that I participated. There was this bias commission of Zondo. I also participated in it. They must set up another commission. I'll be there to share information. But most importantly, I'll be looking with interest at what the Hawks, the SIU are doing.
All right.
Because I think that's where the investigation should go. And let me tell you, we are going to end up where we are today, where they realize that, in fact, we are destroying institutions, chasing guys like Mamelodi. I come from Mamelodi. You can chase me and do other things. When they block these trains and lied that these are toll trains, you know who was the loser? It was not Lucky Montana and Mamelodi. It was the people in the rural areas who traveled to Johannesburg. So this report is such a it is such a missed opportunity for the country. And from a leadership point of view, I think the Chief Justice Zondo has failed our nation. He won't realize that today. He will realize that probably in 10 years' time when we are divided as a people. And that's what he has done by pursuing people like me and not pursuing the truth.
Dr. Montana, I wish we had more time. Thank you so much. Let's leave it there for now and see what your next move then is. That is the former Group CEO at Prasa, Lucky Montana.